Welcome to the College for America virtual art tour. Uh, my name is Rondell Corlett, and I'm going to be going over some artists and talking about some art. Where we're going to start is Edouard Monet, who was born on January 23rd, 1832 in Paris, France. He's from the periods of Impressionism, Modern Realism. He died on April 30th, 1883 in Paris, France. And he was educated in Collège Lecce Jacques Decour, and he's buried in Passy Cemetery in Paris, France. One of his pieces of art is Monet's Olympia. Well, Olympia is the name, and it was created in 1863. The art shows a likeness of a prostitute, and I'm going to just stop right there and talk about that. The reason why in this piece that we can tell that it's a prostitute, first of all, in France at that time, Olympia was a common name for a prostitute. It shows that she has a servant behind her holding the flowers, perceivably of one of her clients. She also has a bracelet on, and the orchid in her hair symbolizes the work that she does. This art is in the style of realism, and one of the ways you can see that is that it is painted with all the flaws of real life. So she isn't painted as a symbol of perfection, more of an image of reality. She's painted in what looks like a French apartment of that time, and she's not exactly perfectly clean. If you zoom in on her hands, we're going to talk about that later. Hands and feet, they seem a little dirty. Okay, and the subject shows imperfection and reality. This shows visible brushstrokes, and also is the sensual nature while projecting the dirty reality of her profession, being a prostitute. The next artist we're going to talk about is Titian. He was born in 1485, between 1485 and 1490, we're not exactly sure, in Pieve di Codro, Italy. He died in 1576 in Venice, Italy. The periods were Italian Renaissance, High Renaissance, and obviously the Renaissance. The piece of art we're going to talk about from Titian is Venus of Urbino. It was created in 1538 in the style of the High Renaissance era, and one of the ways you can tell that is just look at the background of the scenery. So she's painted in almost a Renaissance mansion of the time. It's painted on oil and canvas, and the art shows a woman who is identified with the goddess Venus, but her actual identity is a mystery. The reason why this is important is because at that time, the female nude wasn't really seen as art as a female nude. It was more or less the idea of female sensuality represented in Venus. The expressive content is that it has a amount of seductiveness. She has a seductive stare. She is looking vaguely at the viewer, but if you look deep into her eyes, she has a seductive stare. And the art is composed of something called glazing. In Monet's Olympia, it was more of a realistic look, but when you look at the Venus of Umbro here, it's made up of a lot of layers, 10 to 15 layers, to really get that rich 3D effect on the images. Monet's Olympia versus the Venus of Urbino, style and subject matter. Like I said before, the similarities, they're both nudes. They're both reclining nudes. Both images they're split by a border, and in the image, the Venus of Urbino, you can see the scene taking place in the background. In the upper right of the screen, you see a zoom in of that image that's taking place in the background, the woman looking through the chest while you have the other lady kind of overseeing and watching what she's doing. In Manet's Olympia, the border connects Olympia with her servant holding the flowers. If you look below that image, you see the image of the servant holding the flowers. In both images, the nude figure is really the only one addressing the camera. In Venus of Urbino, the people in the background, as you can see in the top right image, the people in the background aren't addressing the camera. And in Manet's Olympia, the servant, as you can see her eyes, she is actually looking down at Olympia, so she's not addressing the camera either. The only other thing that's addressing the camera other than the main character in the image is the black cat, is the second image on the right. And in both images, it has an animal present. So you can see on the first image on the right is the dog that is sleeping in the image of in the painting Venus of Urbino, and Olympia has the black cat that seems to be startled by the viewer, and you can see that image right there. And some of the differences is that Manet removes a veil of mythology. He gives her a name. He names her Olympia. He is very descriptive with what she's actually doing, what you're actually walking in on as the viewer. So first off, he gives her a name, and her name is not Venus. She's painted in a real apartment of the time, and it shows the imperfections. And if you look at these images here, you can see the brushstrokes. This was not painted through glazing. There are 10 to 15 different layers of translucent oil paint that make up this image. It almost has a flat look, and you can see the brushstrokes when you look in closely. Olympia has a direct stare, unlike the Venus of Urbino's general gaze, like I talked about earlier when we were looking at that image. And Manet's Olympia is more of a two-dimensional figure, unlike the Venus of Urbino. You talk about the Venus of Urbino is made up of glazing, and you see how this image here looks more like a 3D image. And Manet's Olympia, even though it came along after, it looks more of a 2D image, because he's not just trying to project perfection, but really show the reality of the situation. And as you see here, the zoom in of the hands, her hands seem dirty. They, in comparison to her complexion, and that definitely shows the reality of the job that she has. How time and place influences art. In the Venus of Urbino was completed in 1538 in France during the High Renaissance. During this time, like I said before, the female nude really wasn't respected as art, so it more or less had to take on the archetype of Venus. And in Manet's Olympia, this was created in 1865. It was finished in 1865. And as you can see, with the style of realism, it definitely shows the flaws of the main character and also the secondary character, but it shows the reality. It feels like you're looking in on an actual image, not looking at the idea of female sexuality, but more of you're looking directly at a nude woman and she's looking directly back at you. And this is my works cited page, just where some of the sources of this information came from. Thank you very much.